the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education's Pandemic Recovery and Literacy Subcommittee, which was appointed a little over a year ago by Chair Craven to review the state of the Massachusetts literacy plan in light of the fairly pronounced reductions in outcomes that we had witnessed post-pandemic. So this is, I think, the fourth or fifth in a series of meetings that have been tackling specific topics that are elements of our state literacy plan and the mass literacy initiative that is underway. Today's topic is going to be a combination of reviewing the purpose and understanding of high quality instructional materials as a function of early literacy, and following that, a review of the vetting system called Curate that was put in place as part of the Massachusetts Strategic Literacy Plan. And so I'll call the meeting to order now. There is a quorum here. Want to just publicly thank Darlene Lombos, who recently stepped away from the board, who had been present at the majority of these meetings, and we very much appreciated her participation and voice and assistance with the work we're doing here. Payman Rahanaford may be signing in later, hopefully, but is also a member of the committee. And with us on Zoom is Professor Martin West, who is with me, a member of the committee. That's 2 out of 4, so we have a quorum to proceed, but we also don't vote. This is purely informational in nature. As we've done in the past, we'll have 3 speakers. Each will come in turn, speaking about specific elements. And Marty, you and I can engage with the speakers as each one moves forward. And without any further ado, we have as the first person presenting Dr. Sonia Cabell, who is an associate professor at Florida State University. Dr. Cabell's leading research on the impact of knowledge-rich curricula on early literacy achievement, and her recent findings have identified a positive impact of curricula on reading comprehension due to the use of evidence-based practices and rich knowledge building. And so, Doctor, with no further ado, thank you very much for being here, and please tell us more about what we should be thinking about in terms of high-quality instructional materials.
Thank you for having me here. I'm going to share my screen if that's all right.
Please.
And I just have to say, and can you see, you can see the larger PowerPoint, fine?
Yes, it's good. It's right. It's right.
Just from a personal standpoint, I really appreciate the state of Massachusetts. I was trained as a teacher there at Smith College in the 90s, and so that was my start in teaching, and so I really appreciate your state and all that it does to lead education in the United States. Thank you for the introduction. Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about why curricula matter for learning, the evidence on content-rich literacy instruction, and features of content-rich literacy instruction. I like to start with the definition for the science of reading, since there is a great deal of kind of different definitions that float around. I want to share mine. I think of the science of reading as an ever-evolving body of research on how children learn to read. It includes well-established frameworks, theories, and empirical studies on what works to build children's language and literacy skills. So it's not only the how reading happens or how we learn to read, but also how to teach reading. It also can be more broadly construed as the science of early literacy, including both reading and writing. And oftentimes, I like to make sure to invoke the birth to 5 space, since that is so important for laying the groundwork and foundation for young children. Today I'm going to be talking primarily in the K2 space, but I just want to mention that as well. And when I think about who contributes to the science of reading, it's a lot of different research areas. So I'm in reading education, so reading educators do early childhood education, special education, the field of neuroscience, linguistics, psychology, communication sciences and disorders. I probably left off a few here, but there are a lot of empirical bodies of literature that contribute to the science of how we learn to read and how to teach reading. And one important thing to keep in mind is the idea that marginal shifts early in a child's life make a difference later on in a big way. So this is a graph of the Matthew effects in reading. It's the idea that skill begets skill. This graph is talking about foundational skills, so children with foundational skills and without foundational skills. But you can replace this that with vocabulary or knowledge gaps. The idea here is that while all children grow in their ability, children will grow at a faster pace, those who have the skills to do so. You can see that in kindergarten, that really the gap is really small. Imagine in the birth to 5 space that the gap is even smaller there, and a marginal shift very early on can help children later on. Now, in terms of curricula and the role of curricula in the classroom, there's a body of substantive literature. A lot of it is in the early childhood period. I think about the work by Robert Pianta and colleagues out of the University of Virginia for many years. Is the idea that it takes both teacher professional development and research-based literacy curricula to enact student learning. Now, what do I mean by teacher PD? I mean not only the professional development that they might get kind of once a year, but really I'm talking about the ongoing professional development they get, the coaching supports, the training supports, the coursework, those kinds of things, the teacher professional development. But to really affect student literacy learning, it also takes a research-based literacy curriculum. When I say research-based, I just want to be precise about my terms. When I say research-based, I really mean that it is based on the extant research. When I say evidence-based, evidence-based in my mind means that there's been research done on that particular tool. I'll talk about that in a moment. But so I deliberately use the term research-based here. Now, when you think about reading frameworks on which to look at reading and how it develops over time, the reading rope by Hollis Scarborough is a very useful one that I really love the imagery of. Language comprehension and word recognition combine to leads to skilled reading over time. And it's those strands of language comprehension and word recognition that you see there on the screen that really come together for young children. So having access to all of those strands very early on really matters. In particular, I'm going to focus the rest of the talk really on language comprehension, because a lot of times in our earliest grades, sometimes the language comprehension piece is minimized or is left out. Now, that language comprehension piece includes things like vocabulary, language structures, and verbal reasoning, but it also includes background knowledge or science and social studies knowledge. Sometimes people think, oh, kids will, first they're learning to read and then they read to learn. Well, that is a description of development that Jean Shaw shared with us. It wasn't a description of how to teach reading. Really, children need to be developing these early competencies right from the beginning. The simple view of reading is another way to look at reading. It invokes the same things that Scarborough's rope does, with the ultimate goal being reading comprehension, the product of automatic word recognition or decoding and language comprehension. If I can recognize words automatically and understand what's being read, then I'm a skilled reader. If you take away one or the other, I'm not really reading, okay? Now, as I said, I'm gonna focus the rest of the talk on the language comprehension pieces. So language comprehension not only consists of language skills, but also of knowledge and science and social studies knowledge. Oftentimes that knowledge is overlooked, but it's hard to overstate the importance of prior knowledge in comprehension. We might be able to read all the words in a passage, but if we really don't understand or have the prior knowledge to understand it, we won't really truly understand the passage. So we use our prior knowledge to understand what we're reading and listening to all the time. And we also know that how well one can comprehend would depend on how much knowledge one has. Now, there's been theorists over time, and I serve on the Knowledge Matters Campaign Scientific Advisory Board, where we discuss these matters as well. A lot of times in literacy education, we've invoked activating background knowledge, which is absolutely important. There's been good research to show that activating background knowledge is critical. But how do you activate what you don't have? Susan Newman posed this question, and I love it, because if we don't have the background knowledge, no amount of activation is really going to help you. So what I'm arguing for is through curricula to build background knowledge as well. Now, some people might say, well, science and social studies knowledge, that happens in science and social studies time. The unfortunate reality in our schools, and it's been like this for a long time, is that science and social studies instruction, particularly in the earliest grades, gets the short shrift in our time. And some people think this is a consequence of reading, like reading has become the bully. And that started happening in the early 2000s with the advent of Reading First and No Child Left Behind, that the blocks of time for literacy grew and grew. So this isn't the fault of teachers or districts or state departments of education, but rather this is a function of what has been going on in the United States in a broader way. In recent years, districts around the United States have been about the last 10 years since the advent of the Common Core state standards in 2010. Districts have been integrating science and social studies into English language arts. And that's where a lot of the high quality instructional materials, they have this content literacy integration. My colleagues and I did a meta-analysis on approaches that integrate literacy and content knowledge. And we have found that and these were not necessarily programs that were commercially available. These were all of the research studies that were experiments or quasi-experiments. We found 35 of them in K through 5, with moderate to large effects on vocabulary and comprehension, and significant effect on standardized comprehension, and a large effect on content knowledge as well. So we found, in short, that looking at the literature, that approaches that integrate literacy and content knowledge benefit children's vocabulary and comprehension skills more than siloed approaches. This is not to say that I'm not advocating for only integrated approaches. I think having high quality instructional materials that integrate in the English language arts block is important, but I also think that science and social studies needs to also be intact and both be speaking to one another. This is a list of the evidence-based content-rich literacy approaches in K through 2. Again, when I say evidence-based, I'm meaning these have actually been researched or have research studies. Now, I'm not saying most of the curricula that you'll be looking at do not have an evidence base, but they are research based. So I am not diminishing the value of those curricula. It's very expensive and difficult to have randomized controlled trials done on all of these products. Believe me, I know. I conducted 2 randomized controlled trials on core knowledge language arts, the knowledge strand, which is widely used in the United States, and found that on both our researcher created and standardized outcomes, that there was an impact on vocabulary and science and social studies knowledge. And in fact, in our study, we found the generalized impact was on vocabulary, which is a rare finding in the broader literature to improve vocabulary on a standardized measure. But again, this doesn't mean that all curricula need to have had to have research done on that curriculum to be a great curriculum. What my colleagues and I distilled were the features of content-rich literacy instruction in the primary grades based on that corpus of 35 broader studies. And this is specifically for primary grades K2, that curricula were planned around science and social studies topics. That means that was like a driving factor versus something on the side, versus something extra or incidental. They used conceptually coherent text sets ordered to build content knowledge, and these text sets were specifically designed to incrementally build knowledge and cohere on particular topics. And then discussion and writing focused on building knowledge. So the discussion and writing wasn't just focused on
more broadly on things. It was always very knowledge focused and teaching relationships among words. Words are selected in order for their relationships to be examined more closely. And this contrasts really with typical English language arts instructions, which is often organized around themes and not topics, such as what can animals teach us. Typical ELA instruction also relies on activating but not building background knowledge, even though they might say that they're building background knowledge. And the text sets in typical English language arts materials are inconsistent in their coherence. And in doing that, they're really benefiting the knowledge pieces in typical materials are really benefiting those that come with the background knowledge already. So, in short, my work looks at the promise of integrating content and literacy approaches for children's vocabulary and comprehension.
Thank you. And if we could get the screen back. Dr. West, do you have any questions or thoughts while we have Dr. Cabell available?
Compelling presentation, and I appreciate the distinction you were making between research-based and evidence-based curricula. I think that's helpful for us to understand, and also just the general emphasis on building background knowledge in a systematic way. I guess the first question that comes to mind is the sort of balance between decoding and the focus on comprehension through background knowledge. A lot of times, I also, by the way, appreciated your definition of the science of reading. A lot of times right now, conversations around the science of reading are sort of just focusing exclusively on systematic instruction and decoding skills. And one concern that people who otherwise would think of that as a positive development have is that can distract or crowd out attention to background knowledge. Mm-hmm. How do you think about the relationship between those two, not just priorities, those two essential components of reading instruction in the early grades? Like, is there a trade-off between the two where we have to find a balance, or can they be integrated in some way? How should we think about that?
That is a really great question, because in talking about the language comprehension side, I am in no way diminishing the importance of phonics instruction and that foundational skill instruction. So I agree with you, and I also agree with you that a lot of times conversations end up focusing only though on phonics instruction versus more broadly. And while the systematic and explicit phonics instruction is essential, so in any curriculum or curricular list that you're choosing or advocating, you absolutely need to have that piece of it in the, it doesn't necessarily have to, not every program that's on, that people refer to as HQIM plus, I'm thinking of something like Wit and Wisdom, they recommend doing something like pairing foundations with it, or another structured phonics type of approach. I'd say that whatever you do needs both of those elements. Those elements aren't always integrated in these approaches. The ones that of the widely used curricula that I am aware of in the K2 space, those pieces are integrated. I think ARC Core integrates them in terms of the decodable, in terms of both the phonics pieces and the and the content pieces. But you'll find in most of these programs that those pieces aren't necessarily integrated with one another yet, not until about the third grade. But it's very, very important. So for example, core knowledge language arts, I studied the knowledge strand. It has a skills strand. So their whole product would be the skills and knowledge strands in the K2, but they are decouplable in the K2 space. But I would never advocate for only a comprehension, strand without a solid skills strand in early literacy.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That means we need to pay attention to both of those things at the same time. And it may be that some districts could achieve a solid approach to both sides through different curricular products that are being used in parallel with one another.
And
Yeah.
And Dr. West, can I also say that the other thing is you want to look at what's going on in the science and social studies. So if there is robust science and social studies instruction and happening in districts, which oftentimes in the K-2 setting, their reports have shown that there isn't.
Right.
My own personal experience with large districts has shown that there really isn't. You need to see what's going on. So if they have a robustness of content, it doesn't have to all be about the English language arts block, but what's going on throughout the day that would support those efforts. But one thing I caution is not to leave out the language comprehension piece because language actually from birth, that language piece is so important. And if it's not supported, then we leave out a huge deal of that you begin to see in 3rd and 4th grade that they're not really understanding. It's because you haven't really done stuff with the language and the knowledge from birth forward.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
If I can jump in with a couple of questions as well with the couple of minutes we have. The first is I recognize that vocabulary development is one of the pillars of early literacy development. Much of what I've seen and read is that expanding vocabulary is done much more effective in the context of a subject matter or a knowledge-based instruction rather than randomly teaching words out of context. And so I'm just wondering if when a school does select a strong science or social studies curriculum, if that's not one factor in which it's actually lifting up knowledge-based literacy, and if that shouldn't be something that is part of every district's practice. Cannot hear.
Are you
Other-
asking about within science and social studies curricula, not English language arts curricula?
Right.
Within science and social studies curricula?
Right, if that's a place where they intersect and support one another, or is that done?
The vocabulary pieces and the language pieces, because those language pieces of the conversations that they're having, the discussions that they're having that go back and forth, that build that foundation around that. But in science and social studies, most often the words that will be selected will be the content words primarily and only. Whereas in English language arts instruction, these integrated approaches, you find a mix of the content words as well as what Beck and McCowan's work has referred to as the tier 2 kinds of words, the high mileage words, what some people refer to as academic vocabulary more broadly, those words that they will encounter again and again in text. Both of those kinds of words are really important to teach. But you're absolutely right in thinking about how the word selection, the word learning really is aided by the relationships among the words versus it being a word here, a word here, and a word here, which is frankly how a lot of our English language arts instruction has traditionally been, select words based on the text. The text is not carefully selected. Now, if the texts are carefully selected to actually be a coherent text set, you're going to automatically find a lot more of this going on in what children are hearing incidentally and what teachers might be able to teach, because there's a lot of incidental vocabulary instruction we learn more words incidentally than we do through direct instruction.
That's great. And finally, I just want to make sure I correctly picked up on this, or I want to be corrected if I heard it wrong. But many of the broadly available curricula out there will lean into some areas rather than others. And I think you specifically said how wit and wisdom is best served by having fundamentals, or that, and I think about this in the context of being like a district director who's got to provide an appropriate curriculum for the whole district and find the right material. So when vetting those materials, it sounds like one important thing is to understand those areas on the Scarborough's reading rope that are strongly provided and other areas that are going to require being supplemental. It doesn't mean it's a bad curriculum or one that shouldn't be available to the district, but that they should be savvy consumers. And then Another aspect of this I think about is, being mindful that our curriculum frameworks are a technical document that help build curricula, or that should contain the elements of every framework within a given curricula. And Massachusetts has a vetting system specifically because we have our own frameworks. Meanwhile, a curricula is a broader plan for a given period of time, a school year, or a session of time. And then finally, at the classroom level, it drills down to lesson plans, which is not the same thing as the whole curriculum, and is not the same thing as a entire learning curriculum framework. And so understanding the vocabulary of these things among practitioners, you'll have some teachers who draft their own curricula, or districts that build their own. What is out there for places that want to do a thing like that, to know that they're covering all the bases and providing quality, or is that a gap in our ecosystem right now?
Thank you for that. I think that there have been examples of districts that have built their own and are building their own successfully. I think there's an example in your state as well. I think using rubrics or tools that exist that show what are the features that would be important. A recent tool that just came out by the Knowledge Matters campaign, I'm on the scientific advisory board for the Knowledge Matters campaign, is a content-rich curriculum tool to evaluate your curricula to see whether it's content-rich. So that's one area, one kind of tool to use about content-rich ELA materials that could be helpful. I think also there are differences, like you said, among the widely available curricula. And again, I'm not a proponent of any one curricular product in this space. I don't have a horse in the race. And there are open source ones like Bookworms. It has both the phonics and the knowledge building and language pieces. That's open source materials. And then there's ones that are, are behind paywalls, et cetera. But I do think tools such as the knowledge-rich, that content-rich ELA tool that Knowledge Matters campaign just put out on their website last week would be helpful. I also think that it's really important that the expectation is not put on districts that they have to create these things from scratch. It is really difficult. I would find it incredibly, I was a second grade teacher. I was a literacy coach as well back in the Reading First days. I would have found it incredibly difficult if someone says, also add some history in here and add science. I still wouldn't be able to do that knowing what I know now. And I think that that's been really hard. So I think some of these curricular materials they do it differently. Each publisher does it differently, but they've worked with science and social studies experts to, develop something. But none of the publishers that I've ever spoken with have said that their ELA curricula replaces their science and social studies, but it is more of a supplement too.
Great. So I know you have a hard stop at 1:30. I want to thank you very much for an awful lot of information in a very quick period of time. Incredibly helpful to us all, and thanks very much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye.
So our next presenter is an employee of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Woodley Pierre, Louis or Louise? Louis. Yes. Thank you. Properly French. Yes. Okay. Woodley Pierre Louis, who is the Assistant Director of Instructional Policy, is going to walk us through one of the main questions today, which is understanding the operations of our curate system, how it is intended to assist the field, and maybe some thoughts about where its limitations show. So thank you. I give the floor to you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today to speak specifically on how the department is signaling quality for materials that support effective early literacy instruction and practices as aligned to mass literacy and the BESE educational vision. That work was launched in 2019. We got 2019, when we launched the Curriculum Matters Instructional Materials and Professional Development Initiative as a strategy to strengthen teaching and learning in Massachusetts. This is because the reports were revealing, or the research revealed, that teachers were spending a lot of their time cobbling for materials and spending a reported 7 to 12 hours of their time to do so, as opposed to what they really want to do, which is internalizing lessons so that they can make learning relevant and interactive for students, while also thinking about those targeted supports, data informed, to really meet the needs of the students specifically in front of them. And so that work is grounded in our theory of actions, that first, if we provided schools and districts the information they need about aligned curricula and aligned to also be culturally relevant, in addition to getting the professional learning, the ongoing professional learning to use materials skillfully for the students, then their own experiences, that of students, would ultimately improve. And so that first step was to identify what are the materials that are aligned for teachers to use. And there launched Curate, Curriculum Ratings by Teachers, where we began to identify, or at least define, what makes materials high quality. First and foremost, they needed to be aligned to the standards and be easy to use by teachers through inclusive practices. Curate is specific to the Massachusetts lens and looks at, signals the priorities of Massachusetts. And so our Curate process begins when materials that have been found to be aligned to standards through an external third-party teacher-led review process become eligible. If they are eligible for a Curate review, we then convene Massachusetts teachers to evaluate and rate those materials using Curate rubrics that are aligned to our frameworks and attend to not only standard alignment, but also Massachusetts priorities, which include representation, accessibility for different student groups, and being inclusive in practices. Next, as you can see from this slide, each content area and grade band has a rubric that guides the review of the standards alignment and classroom application. As you can see here from the ELA K5 rubric, criteria includes looking at the text quality and organization, which does attend to the content-rich piece of the learning in the materials, along with foundational skills and the classroom task and instruction. Our Curate review of comprehensive core materials attends to all the standards that support effective instruction of the components of core literacy block as outlined by Mass Literacy. The majority of Curate reviewed materials include foundational skills within the core program, which we review, and in the rare cases where the foundational skills is not part of the core program, it will need to be supplemented with a foundational skills program like Appleseeds, which we created to meet that particular need, and it is free. So from these Curate reviews, we publish the panel's findings in user-friendly reports for teachers in districts across the Commonwealth to consult. Now, Dr. Cabo spoke of how every curricula has its own approach, and also recognize that every district has their own localized needs. And so we know that it's not just about the instructional materials, it is also about identifying which of those available materials will best serve and strongly support the teachers and students in a particular district. And so in addition to signaling quality through Curate, we have developed a resource, Implement MA, where we support districts, we provide guidance for them to engage in a robust and an inclusive process that includes diverse stakeholders who have different perspectives, skill sets, and knowledge to select and well implement materials with an equity lens And this is so that they can choose the best available material aligned to their equity needs, that will support the assets that the district already has, and provide the aligned professional learning to ensure that the enacted curriculum with the high quality instructional materials supports and affirms students' identities.
But before we go on,
Yes.
how long ago was this first launched?
It launched the very first year in 2019, similar to our launching of the program.
Very good. And is it voluntary on the part of districts to reach out for what appears to be technical assistance in engaging in this process?
Yes, so we had an evaluate and select network to support districts in that process. We also developed an online learning resource where if districts opt to do so independently, because sometimes scheduling does not align with them attending our network sessions, that is available for them to support, and they have reached out to us to do some independent consultation about their own process.
Thank you.
And so through this work last year, we also began collecting data from our districts and charters. And as of now, we know that 73% of districts have reported at least one curriculum that they're using. And we continue to get additional information as more districts report the materials that they have in use.
And is this curriculum specifically to English language arts, or could be any of the topics that would be reviewed?
It includes ELA, math, and science currently in K-12. Most, I will say, in the ELA space, most of the materials reported are in the K-5 space. But yes, the 73% reflects all reported within those three content areas and the whole K-12 grade band.
And I will say, if my memory serves properly, the last time we saw this map, it wasn't at 73% yet. There's been some ongoing information provided.
Yes.
So
there's been
that's
an increase.
encouraging.
And I would say it's great that within a year, at least 73% of districts are at least reporting information, and that's a success.
Good.
And so, again, it's not just about the materials, it's about the resources and supports. Since 2019, the support that we've provided include grants to offset the cost to purchase materials and initial PD, again, PD being crucial to skillfully implement. The Evaluate and Select Network, which is aligned to that Implement MA process, and we support cohort of districts through the first two phases, evaluate and select materials, in addition to those comprehensive grant programs that provide funding, and that crucial PD, the coaching, and other supports and assistance that we know is important to skillfully implement those materials.
Wow, well, that's a lot. Thank you.
Yes.
And again, Member West, we'll defer to you at the outset. Any questions, thoughts, or additional ideas you might want to share?
First, I'm very encouraged to see the increase in the share of districts that you noted. I can't see the map from where I am because I don't have the slides, but it strikes me as a very positive development. I wanted to ask a question first, just to make sure that I understand the process, Woodley. Am I right that you said there's sort of a external, though teacher-led, evaluation of whether a curriculum sort of is in fact aligned to the state standards, and maybe also that has other evidence to support its approach before we ask teachers to rate its usability and their perceptions of its alignment? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. So it is a baseline. It's like, are they aligned? And that is because in outreach to our own educators, we want them to invest their time, not just attending to the standards alignment piece, but really their focus is on how well does it reflect Massachusetts priorities. And so to invest their time, a minimum threshold has to be met to say that they are aligned, and with the Massachusetts specific lens, it's, well, how well then will they well serve our students and teachers given our priorities as reflected in a Massachusetts curriculum frameworks.
And
literacy,
what happens then when a district is using something that doesn't meet that initial threshold of us considering it aligned enough that we would want teachers to spend time on it?
Could you please repeat?
So what happens when a district is using a curriculum that doesn't meet that initial standard in terms of alignment, where you were saying you'd want teachers to spend time on it to rate its usability?
So that's where curate reports come through. So we signal what we speak to which ones we've reviewed and whether they're aligned. If we have not reviewed, we refer them to the appropriate third-party evaluation person. Except for our curate process, because publishers opt in to have us review their materials. If they did not submit for curate review, we then just tell districts, please look to this other resource to understand whether or not they're aligned or not aligned. But within Massachusetts, it is through curate we speak to, here are the materials we've reviewed, and if we did not review them, hey, you don't see the information, check this other website then to see whether or not they did not meet our threshold. But in general, we try not to communicate anything about quality for materials that were not submitted to us for review.
Right. And if I may, I just want to reinforce, I think, the underlying point of, I think, your question, Marty, which is that this is a purely voluntary exercise of technical assistance that districts may or may not choose to make use of.
Correct.
There's nothing that compels the districts to coordinate through the curate system.
Correct.
Okay. And I think in some instances that can be a very challenging situation for parents, school board members, others I've heard from who want to advocate for choices that they can see are on curate, which is publicly available all the time.
Yes,
right?
it is.
But they see that technical assistance just isn't being sought by their district. And that my sense is that's still a pretty widespread thing, districts not checking in.
Well, we don't know, or at least I don't have the data readily available to see like which districts or how many districts are consulting our website specific to curate, but we know that it is publicly available, and we do communicate via our newsletters and other ways that new reports are out that districts can consult, and continue to ask them to look at what is available and to seek us for assistance should they have any questions about materials they're curious about.
I think that's right. And one other point aligned with that, when we look at the map of districts sharing what curricula they use, if the information about the curricula is publicly available, stakeholders can see for themselves whether that is a curricula that is shown as aligned and high quality on curate or at Ed Reports. And if it's not, they can draw their own conclusions.
Correct, that is correct.
Yeah, okay. Anything else, Marty?
Yeah, just one question that is at least tangentially related to this, which is, are we aware of Massachusetts districts using their ESSER funds to purchase curricular content in English language arts and use that as a sort of one-time expenditure given the temporary nature of the funding?
We know of the districts that have used ESSER funds through our own programs, but within the entirety of the department, I am not sure. But yes, we have information about which districts have accessed high quality materials through ESSER based on the programs they're involved with in Center for Instructional Support.
Right.
Are making.
I'm sorry?
I may not have come through. I was asking, do you have a sense of how common an expenditure that is on the part of districts?
Well, I know that there is a need and want, and it varies depending on the materials that they're looking to purchase. But we've always needed to ask for increased funding to support that need. So it varies by publisher, the program that they want to adopt. But we know that we have had outreach beyond what we have provided, with districts seeking more opportunities to get funding to make purchases.
Absolutely. This question kind of goes to the department's capacity with this work. Not every state is doing this sort of vetting process, and this isn't the only vetting process we're doing. I know we've recently adopted some work in terms of early screening quality as well, which is a whole additional task.
Yes.
So when I see the process that is involved to review a curriculum through Curate, that's going to require seeing that all those materials have been provided, gathering together all of the teachers that are doing the reviewing. Is going to be some text drafting and everything else. So that sounds like it's a process that's going to take several weeks, possibly several months, and it's going to be a burden on a certain amount of staff time at the department. And similarly, the profession or the technical assistance in implementing a program that is offered here, if you're going to be communicating directly with each of our nearly 400 districts, I assume this is available to charter districts as well.
Oh, yes.
That also is a process that is going to require a decent amount of time, probably timely responsiveness to each district you're working with at any given time.
Yes.
So with all of that, and again, probably months, I would think.
Yes, I mean, the Curate process, we divide it into 2 semesters, and that's also because we want to be responsive to the educators because they're working professionals, and so the time they spend to us, particularly for these reviews, are outside of their own working hours. Training occurs because we also provide training for them to understand how to use the rubrics, and that is time intensive, and it takes months and multiple hours.
And how much BESE staff personnel, in terms of like full-time equivalent, do you have doing all of this work?
Well, let's just say likely all of the content folks within our Center for Instructional Support, because each panel gets the support of the individual content person.
Okay.
So I would say within CIS, our content folks have dedicated time to contribute to this because it is time intensive. So.
And so in terms of like how many people are hands-on? Roughly, yeah. You're not in a row. Yeah.
No, but let's just say like right now it's 10,
Yeah.
but it does require a lot of time and in some ways shifting what we do in the spring and fall, but it is built in capacity is based on, well, what do we have available given that it is going to take a lot of time, so.
Right. And,
Yes.
and I make that point, and I just want to kind of get that on the record, that what that requires is for publishers who voluntarily come forward and districts who voluntarily engage. And so if this were something that was going to become technical assistance that's a norm for all districts, that would actually require some significantly additional resources in terms of personnel and time, even if the process has become a pretty well-functioning, well-defined process.
Yes, indeed, because even the Evaluate and Select Network, that is also part of the support as we look at not just the Curate process, but it's about supporting the selection when that happens and also looking beyond to implementation because some of the districts are saying, hey, we've got materials now, BESE, how can you then provide us some technical assistance outside of even the professional learning that we recommend happens also to well implement. So yes,
Right.
there would need to be an increase, yes.
Good. And one different aspect of this, I was contacted by a publisher who was concerned that they're going to lose access to the marketplace because they're not able to access Curate, is what they said. First thing that is obviously contradicted by what we've already heard, no, districts are free to purchase what they wish, Curate or no Curate,
Yes.
to begin with. Although obviously districts who are taking Curate seriously and see the benefit are probably not going to want to do business with someone who's not visible there. Somewhat, I think, because of the nature of this particular work, they were expressing difficulty accessing vetting by Curate. And so you mentioned that publishers are the ones who come forward. Are there some, can you explain some cases where a publisher might not be considered like right for Curate review?
All right, first and foremost for Curate, it has to be a comprehensive core program.
Okay.
So we don't review supplemental materials that exist. And in terms of third-party evaluation, it doesn't, at least for ELA, our threshold evaluator is Ed Reports. It doesn't need to be Ed Reports. It can be a third-party evaluator that they can say, hey, here's that report to show alignment, but really the process begins with them just saying, yep, we've met this minimum bar, it is a comprehensive core program, and then saying that we would like to be curate reviewed. So that is that process.
Okay, that's again, I think that's a meaningful thing, because if it's someone who is publishing supplemental materials, they may want to just be able to find that information articulated so they could share that with a prospective district.
Yes, yes.
You know, because this does not capture everything for everyone, nor do we have the capacity to do that.
Yes.
I think would be the point. Good. And finally, a little bit more on apple seeds, because as we heard before, and I just want to verify that from within department staff, so this is a supplemental foundational skills curriculum that is not intended to comprehensively provide everything you'd see on Scarborough's Reading Room.
No. Well, it does provide all of that, but it's intended to be a supplement for districts that may have a core program that does not have that foundational skills, or it is a district that may have foundational skills that might need to be strengthened. It is intended to be the strongest possible of the foundational skills program that exists to supplement what may not exist in the materials. And as Dr. Cabo pointed out, when there's a core program that does not have foundational skills, districts should then do the work to find out, is it really integrated? Are we aligned in terms of, is this the best fit, given that scopes and sequences might vary across from the core to the supplemental, but it exists to provide districts the strongest available foundational skills program if they so needed.
Right.
Because again, most curate rated programs have the foundational skills built in and embedded to again support that skillful progression of skills and knowledge.
Right. Now, my understanding is apple seeds was not vetted as if it were a published curriculum, but the fact that it's offered by the department is a signal that it has been reviewed for its.
Yes, it was vetted in some ways by
please.
Massachusetts educators. So we piloted it and they gave feedback as to where it needed to be strengthened. So our vetting is through educators who used it and informed our own strengthening of those gaps and weaknesses that they identified.
So if it wasn't the formal process, it was something.
There was a
aligned with
process,
it.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's good. And you know, I think over time, every publisher, every author of curricula pays attention to what's going on in the field. And you're going to see products adjust over time.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about where apple seeds came from and what we could expect for that kind of evolution? And how do we stay on top of that if the publisher is making changes?
Well, I'll say through Curate, we know for sure Massachusetts, we have power in that way. And so whenever we put out reports and we know the challenges in materials, in the next iteration, we do see those improvements specific to some of the feedback provided. Within apple seeds, it began with us knowing that, hey, mass literacy is outlining that the core literacy block should attend to all components of literacy. Earlier on when we started the foundational skills, the evidence-based early literacy was its in emphasis across the state, and we recognized we needed to strengthen that piece, particularly because we also required screening assessment. And so what existed? It came on with saying like, what is a foundational skills program that existed, recognizing that we needed to align it to our own priorities, such as the representation and diversity and inclusivity piece. We brought it to Massachusetts, had the teachers vet them and give us feedback on whether it supported their own effective practice aligned to evidence-based literacy. It got reviewed and strengthened and improved so that it would well serve Massachusetts educators who needed a strong foundational skills program.
Okay, so that's very helpful. And if I can summarize and correct me again,
Yes.
if I'm summarizing incorrectly. So if there's an apple seeds version 1 now, this process exists and is known. So the version 2 or the alterations can at least be made known, and we can supplant what previously existed.
Correct.
As we go forward.
Yes, it is being strengthened to reflect, the BESE educational vision. It is in the process right now of being strengthened as informed by the feedback of our districts that are also piloting and supporting us with refining it. So it is in a state of continuous improvement. So we try to model what we say we want of districts. So continuous improvement informed by feedback from the stakeholders, which are our districts, and the students that we serve, yes.
Good. And similarly, with commercially published curricula, this is a dynamic and not a static field.
Yes.
And therefore, Curate isn't a window of time where the products that are going to be available forever have been reviewed and we're done. This instead needs to be an ongoing process that
Yes.
into the unforeseeable future would need to continue if it's going to be useful for districts
Yes.
over time.
Yes, because again, as we work to support culturally and linguistically sustaining practices and being more inclusive, those are the areas where the materials do need to be strengthened. And as publishers make these upgrades based on feedback, such as those Curate reports, they are continually improving. And it is very much dynamic because a lot of the programs now are digital, and so the continuous improvement is consistent. Some are updating within like a year or 2 years, and so it's not if you were reviewed in 2017, you're forever high quality, because the research and evidence changes, or at least gets better, and so they are being revised to be better.
That's great. Is there anything else that you want to add to what you've shared with us at this point?
It would just be shameless plug that we're doing great work within the department specific to this work, and that it's great to hear that the districts are seeing the impact of this and are very much committed. So other than to say like we have a great team and we're doing great work to support this, nothing else.
Good. No shame, and the plug is well received.
No shame.
Marty, anything further before we move on? That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's great. And we will shift to our third presenter today, and thank you very much for being here from one of our friends at the Salem Public Schools, which is a great location, and we do have a lot of friends there. We have Shauna Earps, who's the Early Learning Coordinator and a former K-5 literacy coach. And Shauna, I want you to know that our process wants to include as many frontline practitioners as we possibly can. So that is great. Very much appreciate you being here. And Sean is going to speak to the district perspective of their process evaluating, selecting, and implementing the high-quality AELA materials they are using, and also a bit of your experience with the Center for Instructional Support's GLEAM grant, which Salem was a party to. So with that, I'll throw it right over to you. Cannot hear you. Doesn't appear so on the screen, though. Shauna, bear with us just a moment. I can't hear your voice in the room. Yeah, I'm afraid it might be your mic.
I'm not sure if you all can hear me, but.
Yes, we can.
I'm able to hear Sean.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the Zoom. Yikes. We'll work this out. Bear with us just a moment. We've got a first-rate team here, though. Don't worry. We'll get this done. Would it make sense for me to suggest to Shauna that she maybe also dial into the Zoom so we could catch her voice that way?
She can try, it's just,
Do you have that information on hand?
it's just her feed.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
It was picking up her audio on her, and it should still show up on the captions.
Yeah, and there were no captions appearing. Do you see her audio signed in?
See if she should jump back out and hop back in.
Also, do you see someone trying to sign in with the, with an audio, like a phone number? Okay.
Popping up on your screen, Jess, or on Helene's screen?
No,
No.
I just got Helene's mouse working.
Okay. I guess it's reassuring that all these publicly purchased computers have clearly gone to the lowest bidder.
Honestly. I had more problems with the last couple. Oh yeah, can she log off and log in again?
Yeah, Sean, I think the suggestion is to maybe exit the Zoom altogether and come back in, and maybe we'll have sound.
Oh,
Oh, you
Wait a
have
minute.
your cell phone? So never, she got a cell phone? But we can't hear
okay,
her.
now she should unmute her cell phone.
Oh, look at that. Okay, you're here twice. Try speaking now.
Are you able to hear me?
We got it. Okay, bingo. Mischief managed.
For some-
You might need to mute your computer so that the phone doesn't.
I can't hear you.
You just got rid of the echo, so we're in good shape.
No, I got rid of the echo. Just tell her she has to mute her computer.
Yeah, please mute your computer, but not your phone.
Computer's muted and I turned my sound all the way down. So
And your sound is
all the echo
perfect.
sound, you should be good.
We are in business, Shauna. Welcome, and please proceed.
To go.
Okay. You're all set, Shauna.
Can you see my screen? Hold on, let me share.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Salem's experience and our shift to high quality instructional materials, which has been a multi-year shift for us, and we have done it in phases. So we recognized in Salem pre-pandemic that our current curriculum resources were not supporting the achievement of our students, and we were also hearing from teachers that they were problematic for them as well. We looked across several of our current data points in order to make a decision to move to a more research-based and comprehensive program from what we had currently been using. Some of those data sources were our MCAS scores. At the time, we were still using the benchmark assessment system for assessment, and we were also using PALS as our phonological awareness assessment at the time. We were also observing that we had a lot of inconsistencies across our schools with how the resources were being implemented and how they were being used. Salem is a district that has a high level of teacher turnover from year to year. And upon interviewing and chatting with teachers, they were reporting that they were spending too much time locating the resources that they needed to use in their lessons, such as mentor texts and manipulatives. And so that was adding to what we heard earlier, that teachers were spending, 7 to 12 hours of their outside lives trying to be planned for their school day, which is unsustainable and leads to teacher burnout. So these are some conclusions that we came to prior to the pandemic, but of course these became even more important post-pandemic. We did the first part of this process actually in the middle of the pandemic. So we formed a group in March of 2020. I went back to look at some of our materials to sort of highlight in our process, and the exact date was March 11th when we first met. It encompassed 5 of our 6 schools. We do have one school that is an innovation school that is building their curriculum. We know that we serve a really diverse and rich population here in Salem, and we felt it was important to have all of our teachers and all of our departments represented on that initial team so that we could analyze the materials through different perspectives, but also so that the decision was agreed upon by teachers from different departments with different specialties. So when we reported our findings at the end, it was a joint and collaborative effort that all of our teachers feel that they would have some say in. You can see we started early spring of 2020, and also to speak to what came up earlier, we did pay teachers their hourly rate. This work was done initially outside of school time. We met after school to begin this process. So the first step of that committee was to look at what does current research say about evidence-based practices in foundational reading and the overall reading curriculum, and which resources have received high reviews. Also, we were interested in seeing what other districts were doing, but Salem was sort of an early adopter in this process, and so it was a little bit harder to have that cross-district lens. I can tell you now that we hear from many districts that are looking at one of our curriculum resources that we're using as a contender and are looking for more information. So I would say that cross-district communication has increased. We also wanted them to start to think about why we were making the change. We know that change is hard for teachers. So this group individually, after some initial meetings where we read some articles related to the current landscape of student achievement for our kids in Salem and the types of curriculum that we were currently using, as well as what initial research was saying about strong literacy instruction. So that helped us establish the why. And then that group individually explored both Curie and Ed reports to start to look at what are some of those programs that have high ratings. And then we started to compile a list. So here in Salem, we knew that we were only going to entertain programs that were highly rated consistently using Curie and Ed reports. Step 2 was to think about what was our criteria. So we had to think about what was important for us here in Salem when we were looking at the materials. We knew that we wanted them to be highly rated, but as it was stated earlier, we know that curriculum resources are all very different from one another, and we wanted the one that we felt was the best fit for our students. So we also knew at the time, you can see on our overall, was that we wanted it to be knowledge building. So we wanted our students to be developing their knowledge of the world, and the one that we chose is thematic and knowledge building. We also really felt that it was important for it to represent the students that we serve. So we wanted high quality text sets where our kids were able to see themselves in the books that we were reading, as well as including some components of social justice and thinking about that as well as being agents for change in the world that we're living in. It was important to us that teachers with a large range of experience be able to use the text, use the curriculum resource both in their tier 1. And we also felt strongly that we wanted to be able to support our students in small groups so that it supported teachers with differentiating that instruction. We are a district that also has shifted to
it was important to us
a
that
highly
teachers
rated
with a
training
large
resource,
range
and
of
so we are now,
experience,
be able
navigating
to
how to
use
use
the information
use
that
the
that is
curriculum
giving to
resource
us
both
about
in
our
their tier
students to
one,
help us
and we
plan
also felt strongly
what a
that we wanted to be
differentiated
able
and
to
super
support our
data-driven
students
small
in small
group
groups
looks
so that
like
it
for our
supported
students. Teachers with differentiating that instruction.
So then we began
we are a
investigating
district that
our
also has
resources.
shifted
So we
to,
needed to do some
a
additional
highly
online
rated
resources.
training
We generated
we are
that
now
list.
we
We
contacted more than
navigating how to
10
use the
publishers
information that
to
that is
send
giving
us
to us
sample
about our
materials
students
that
to
we
help
could
us
look
plan.
through.
Also felt
For the
strongly that
timeline, we did this work in the summer of 2020. So we brought the materials to a central location. We spread them out so that we were socially distanced. We were masked. Teachers on the committee made appointments so that we were not there at the same time congregating closely. And we tried to wipe down the materials in the beginning in between appointments. So from here, we used a Google form and we asked the teachers that contributed to rank the materials based on certain criteria and then comment on different components of the program. We used that feedback from the teachers to come to a consensus over finalists, publishers, or vendors that we wanted to get more information about to help us make a decision. The three that are included on this slide were the three that were in our top three based on teacher feedback. We invited these three publishers to present more in depth the aspects of their program, the materials of their program, and the components of their program. They did this virtually. The group was able to participate in all of these, and then we submitted feedback again on these three and made a recommendation based on the consensus of the group. And we're always clear to say that like no decision is ever unanimous. But of the three, there was a clear front runner that we felt matched the needs of our district. We, in the end, made the recommendation to school committee to use the MyView program, which is what we are currently implementing. So we took that recommendation and we presented it to school committee, the need for why we need a new K-2 literacy curriculum. What was the process that we went through to get to this point? Who were the team of educators that participated in the process, and then making that final recommendation. And then once that recommendation was approved by school committee, we were able to start, that intricate work of now supporting implementation of a new curriculum resource. Implementation, so we are now in year 3 of our K-2, and we also a year later implemented in 3 through 5. So one of the main things that we did in this implementation phase is that we began our partnership with Hill for Literacy through the GLEAM grant, which has included vital implementation support. Teachers received virtual professional development from the publisher the spring before we implemented in that fall. Feedback that we've gotten from teachers is that they appreciate a consistent message across grade levels versus sometimes we have a building-based train the trainer, so the coaches perhaps hear the messaging and then we deliver that message back in our buildings. But we felt that this was such an enormous undertaking that it was important for the teachers to hear the same thing at the same time. So they led professional development for each of our grade level bands virtually in the spring. And then we have professional development days that are built into our opening days before school begins. So over that summer, a team of literacy coaches first developed curriculum maps in Atlas so that we could support the teachers with a curriculum map before we put them into the actual materials. And then we were also able to deliver 4 hours of professional development in the opening days, again, in grade level teams. So for example, I was with kindergarten. My background is that K-2 range. So I had all kindergarten teachers. I was able to introduce them to the maps, give them time to explore the maps, put them, we had the materials there. They had them at that point in their hands. We navigated the resource together as an overview, and then we gave them some time to explore and to begin to start to think about what a day
or what a lesson might look like using this material. Here in Salem, we are very fortunate. We have a very strong coaching model. So we have literacy coaches in each of our elementary schools. So we were able to provide ongoing professional development to our teachers. That's also been a really strong part of our relationship with Hill, because Hill is also providing in building coaching support. It's also helped us as coaches when we come together and we meet with Hill, really roll the program out thoughtfully but consistently across all of our buildings. And then as we were unrolling in our first year, the district made that decision to expand to grades 3 through 5 the following year. And then additionally, we are a district that has also selected a high quality instructional material for our pre-K program. So we are now, it's not the same program. Pre-K programs are a bit different from that K-5 group, but we have some really solid vertical alignment, and for the first time, much more consistency and much more equity across our schools. This is some of the work that we are still currently doing, and this is again partnered with Hill for Literacy. So we're really working to define and refine our MTSS model. So we do have a new screening tool, so we have more consistent data across our schools. And now we're trying to just make those decisions around for our students who are most in need of intervention. What do we have to provide within the MyView program, but also what are supplemental and research-based and strong materials for us to provide tier 2. So you can see from the graphic that we are having really powerful conversations about how tier 1 and tier 2 are different. Here in Salem, we are saying that tier 1 is that whole group lesson. And in addition to that, it's also a differentiated teacher table that all students are getting. So, and then thinking about tier 2, we have to be very strategic. And when the students are getting their tier 2, that's in addition to their tier 1. Our reading specialists have spent most of the spring and some of the fall inventorying what are some of the resources that we have available. And we have found, which is not surprising, that those are very different from school to school. So we are in the process of trying to come to some consensus about what we're using with our students as we progress, monitor, and plan instruction for them. We're also working with, for the first time, well, not the first time, but probably the most strong way, we're working with our multilingual learning department and our special education department to really create consistent understanding of the tiers and implications for our kids, because those departments overlap a lot. And so our students are often seen by different departments and different specialist teachers within the tiers. And then my final slide just speaks to the progress that we've made in our partnership with both the department and also through Gleam. So we would not have made the amount of progress that we've made, I feel, in a relatively short time without that partnership and support. And we know that curriculum resources are really only the beginning. We really need to educate and empower our teachers to be strong teachers of literacy. So we have had over 125 teachers take the Science of Reading graduate course, which is helping us develop some common understanding and some common language when working with our students. We have also developed a group that is exploring that intersection of the science of reading in our multilingual learner population that has met consistently after school to think about that intersection and what that means for our students. We've also been able to connect with other districts that are doing this work and to learn from their experiences and then share our experiences so that we're able to learn from each other. So I would say, Hill has definitely supported us in strengthening our tier 1 using that curriculum and really providing that consistent and equitable support across all of our buildings. We keep talking about how we all need to be rowing in the same direction. And sometimes elementary schools that have strong identities, that's sometimes hard to do. But when we have common conversations with all of those stakeholders in the room, we understand the why. And then as we develop student teacher knowledge, they feel more equipped and more confident in delivering that solid tier 1 instruction. So we really value that our partnership as we work toward that common goal. We're really aiming for equitable and research-based instruction that's really going to benefit all of our students, and we're going to see that benefit in how they are achieving. So I can stop sharing so I can see
That's
all
terrific.
of you.
Yes, thank you. Good to see. You've got the full screen now. Professor West, again, I'll defer to you, and I know you're on a fairly short time schedule at this point, so please have the floor until you're done.
Yeah, Shauna, thank you for sharing Salem's story with us. It sounds like you have done great work and have really strong momentum right now. I guess, we're sitting here trying to think broadly about the state's role in supporting this kind of work. And I was trying to sort of pick out where in the story you just told sort of the state was particularly helpful, or where maybe there was a pain point or a source of tension where additional support would be more helpful. Can you sort of maybe speak to either or both of those things?
I think that the state's been fairly receptive to our needs. So when we have our bi-monthly, check-in meetings as part of the grant, excuse me, they're able to we can ask questions in there. I would say for us, having the funding to support the work that needs to be done is important. It's hard for districts to fund all of those initiatives, but if we say that it's what matters, then that has helped tremendously, that we are able to pay people for the time when they're doing the work. I would also say that the networking meetings that we have once a month, like for example, thinking about, now that Gleam has moved into pre-K, that work can at times be isolating and districts are at very different places. And so now I know that each month I'm going to be able to come and hear from other districts that are doing the work that we're doing. And that's been a bit of a game changer. It's also hard, it's hard work. And so we really can learn a lot from each other, what has worked in other districts. Some districts have given us feedback that they would not have thought to build their curriculum maps prior to implementing, and they were like, that actually makes a lot of sense. Whereas I'm hearing other districts are taking some programs and having teachers pilot different ones to have like a stronger sense of the different programs before they choose one. We were on the early end of that, but that would have been really great feedback, to think about and to try. So I would say that's probably been the biggest impact for us so far.
Great, Mike, I'll let you jump in because I want to hear your comments as well.
Thanks very much. So I think you covered that in a really well-organized, sequential way, the way good teachers do. So thank you very much for that. The couple of things that I really picked up on was what you just said. There are silos on top of silos in the work we do educationally, and one of them is districts just never having a lot of opportunity to reach beyond their own borders and speak to others. So I think that's, you just said, that's something of great value, and I think I just want to highlight that in our record as something that we want to try to foster and expand and continue. Gateway cities do tend to have much higher turnover in staffing than a lot of other districts, and so sustaining this work with the graduate level courses, with the coaching, with the third party professional development providers, is there, looking ahead 5 years from now, how much turnover in your early grades percentage-wise do you think you'd experience, and how do you onboard them so they get to the same place the teachers that have been with you from the beginning are at? Or is that something that's even achievable?
No, that's a great question. I do think that more of our turnover is at the upper levels, if I were to predict, although I know that a lot is at the middle school and high school level versus the early elementary level, but that is something that we're thinking about. It was one of the reasons for making the switch, because we have some professional development that we can reuse when we onboard new teachers that we use to onboard, the original cohort of teachers. And so our new teachers undergo like a week of New Teacher Institute, and one of those is a content afternoon for literacy. So we get them for 3 or 4 hours before school starts. And so we're able to give them that overview before they start teaching, and they have the materials in their hand with a literacy coach with them to get their feet wet with it. So that has been helpful. We also run New Teacher after school. They do a book study. There's different content sessions for that. So, having been a literacy coach in Salem for 10 years, the time it's taking to get someone caught up to speed and feel like they're more confident using a curriculum resources versus what we have been using before, I've seen a tremendous difference. I actually had a principal who, was in a long-term sub classroom with a first, teacher right out of college, who was using those resources to deliver a really solid, small group differentiated lesson. And I don't think that would have been possible, 4 or 5 years ago in trying to get them caught up on what we were expecting.
That is terrific, and I it doesn't just speak, I think, to ramping up people who are new to this work, but it sounds like work that builds a solid school culture among colleagues, and that's a tremendous added benefit. So, thank you. I think I'm hearing that correctly. And finally, just want to say that you've brought multi-tiered systems of support to the table in a really clear and detailed way here. And one of the interesting critiques I've heard of MTSS is where people confuse Tier 3 with the provision of special education services or the provision of multi-tiered systems of support. But I think I heard very clearly from you, you guys know the difference, and that's not what you're doing, right?
Exactly. We have had that conversation in Salem at length. I think that I am hearing from the field that is a conversation happening, and it's a tricky conversation. Historically, I think in districts, Tier 3 has been delivered through special education. And I do think that the trainings of some of those Tier 3 approaches that often get used, such as Orton Gillingham or Wilson, our special educators are the ones who are trained in those. So we're having to shift that mindset that it's the intensity and the duration and the size of the group that makes it Tier 3. But we also have, to be real and honest, we have limited resources within Tier 2. And so one of the questions it's begged is, we have not yet gotten our MTSS triangle to really have it so that the majority of our kids are making progress in Tier 1. We're getting closer, but our Tier 2 needs are such that reading specialists have a hard time understanding how they might deliver Tier 2 and Tier 3 with the number of kids that they have.
So that sounds like a lot of discernment and highlighting the fact that getting an entire school culture to understand a concept like
Can you hear them?
MTSS is a lift.
Just a little bit. So, Mike, unfortunately, I do need to sign off now. So I don't know what that means for your ability to continue. But let me thank you for a productive meeting, and Shauna, thank you for your contributions to it.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. And remember, this is all recorded, so you can scroll right to the end and catch the last bits later. So I think we're in good shape. And thank you very much, Marty. So is there anything you'd like to close with, Shauna, or if not, because I think you've covered a ton of ground in a very efficient amount of time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our experience.
I think Salem's got a lot to show off. It's great. Thank you. Okay, and with that, I think we have covered the full agenda, and I'll adjourn the meeting all by myself because here I am alone. Thank you.